From the heart of our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Backed by the trusted voices of Team Fox. A clear, fresh voice cutting through the noise to tell the truth. It's the Guy Benson Show with Guy Benson.
It is Thursday, June 1st, 2023, a brand new broadcast month coming your way here on The Guy Benson Show. I'm your host, Guy Benson, live in New York City today. Very glad to have you here. Thank you for listening. Between 3 and 6 p.m. Eastern, that's every weekday. We've got a podcast. If you miss any of it, it is free. It is on demand at GuyBensonShow.com or FoxNewsPodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts, plus bonus Benson on the weekends. Lots of options for that. Totally no charge to you. When the show is over, it's available within minutes. I'm the political editor at townhall.com, also a Fox News contributor. Very busy day today, including this evening. Kennedy will have me on her program. She will have Kat Timpf and yours truly in studio together in the back half of the 7 p.m. hour Eastern time on Fox Business Network. And it's going to be, I would say, a poignant edition of Kennedy's show. More on that later. Hope to see you there. That's FBN, probably around 7:40 Eastern or so tonight. And then at 11 p.m. Eastern, it's Gutfeld. I'll be on the panel for that full hour. Looking forward to that. That's Fox News Channel late tonight. So set your DVRs or tune in live. Here's the lineup on the radio side. Brian Riedel, one of our trusted budget wonks, will be here talking about the debt ceiling deal. Yesterday, while we were on the air, we covered live as the House passed the so-called rule to then move on to debate and final passage for the debt ceiling negotiated package. And it ended up passing by a huge margin, more than 300 votes. A majority of Republicans voted yes. A majority of Democrats voted yes on the final bill. So it moves to the Senate. Is it good? Sort of meh? Is it bad? Is it horrendous? From a budgetary perspective, like if you care about fiscal conservatism, constraining spending, that sort of thing, we'll get a review from Brian Riedel. Someone who thinks it's a very bad deal is Chip Roy, Republican congressman from Texas. He was one of the loudest no's on this bill, a dissenter, one of the dozens of Republicans who voted against it. He will be our guest coming up in the next hour today. Chad Pergram, Fox's man on Capitol Hill. No one understands the ins and outs of Hill dealings and how the sausage gets made better than Chad. What comes next? Like, obviously, if you know your Schoolhouse Rock, it goes over to the Senate now. But will that be easy, a piece of cake? Does that get done tonight? Does that get done tomorrow? What does this mean for some of the eventual additional deadlines and cliffs that seem to always be looming in Washington? We will get those details from Chad. And then Will Cain, co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend. We always have good conversations with Will here. I think today will probably be another one. We're talking about Pride Month, culture wars, and sports. We touched on some of this in recent shows. There are some developments involving the Los Angeles Dodgers, now a player for the Toronto Blue Jays. There's an on-air personality at ESPN who's been under fire, and battle lines are being drawn. Some people are receding from the fight. Some people are leaning into the fight. Obviously, I come at this from sort of an interesting perspective as a conservative who happens to be gay and a big sports fan. Will is two of those things. I'll let you guess which ones. And we'll have him here just after 5 p.m. Eastern time for probably a pretty thoughtful conversation. He's a smart guy. So that is all ahead on the program here today. I want to start on the issue of crime, one that we have committed to you. We will continue to follow on this show. I think part of that is just like I have a burr under my saddle, not just because public safety matters, punishing and deterring crime matters, the safety of innocent people matters, but you also had a bunch of gaslighting people on the left and in the media, but I repeat myself, prior to the 2022 midterm elections, saying that this was just a ploy by conservatives to scare people, and the crime thing would just go away after the election because it would be no longer useful. Well, it's debatable how useful it was in the midterm elections. I think it played a major role in places like New York and California, maybe not as much elsewhere as I would have liked or should have, but the issue remains and in some ways is getting worse. So, as a related note to that, I'll just point this out. Remember Chesa Boudin, who was the hyper-woke, criminal-coddling DA who was elected in San Francisco back in 2019? He did such a bad job. It was so disastrous, his term, that the people of San Francisco cut it short. They used the recall provision to throw him out of office and to do so decisively before even his term was complete. It was that bad. Now, things aren't really getting a lot better as we talk about here on the show. People just, leaving the city in droves, not just residents, but businesses. We talked about, Neiman Marcus or Nordstrom's pulling out of downtown San Francisco, the whole issue at Whole Foods. It's still a very big problem, even without Boudin. Boudin is the child of an unrepentant terrorist and was raised by another unrepentant terrorist, Bill Ayers. And then they decided to put him in charge of law enforcement in San Francisco. So you'd say the generic, what could go wrong? Well, a lot of things, so much so that even the left-wing people of SF were like, enough. And I was sort of wondering where he would land next. Since he could no longer help the criminals do more crimes by being soft on crime in the name of progress and equity, what would he do with his time? He made an announcement a few months ago saying he was not planning to seek office, at least in the near term, but it's been mostly crickets from the world of Chesa Boudin. Until this, someone hired him. Place your bets. Okay, ready? If you were guessing academia, come collect your prize. Of course. He's going to help train the next generation of lawyers to be a little bit more like him. The University of California at Berkeley, of course, law school, tweeting this yesterday, welcoming Chesa Boudin as founding executive director of Berkeley Law's new Criminal Law and Justice Center. Boudin sees an exciting opportunity to build on his work of transforming the criminal legal system in profound ways. Oh, yeah, he's an expert in that. He did some profound transforming, didn't he, in San Francisco? So much so that the people of that city, who are not conservatives, said enough is enough, gave him the boot, and now UCal Berkeley's like, come on into the law school. Let's do the transformation here. One of his fellow acolytes, and one of these Soros-funded prosecutors south of San Francisco in Los Angeles, George Gascon, was able to avert a recall effort. And that's too bad, because the terrible, harmful policies that he continues to pursue in that city are putting lives at risk and, in fact, costing innocent people their lives. Bill Malugin had this report about, it feels now like a dog bites man situation, a violent repeat offender left out on the streets, with the system deciding that that is what justice required, only to then kill someone. Here's how Malugin spelled it out in Cut 24.
This is a bad one. Critics of LADA George Gascon say this case is yet another egregious example of what can go wrong when Gascon's policies allow violent criminals to avoid incarceration. So take a look. This is Stephen Sutherland. In late November 2020, he was arrested by LAPD after he used a knife to stab the neck of a construction worker who he felt was making too much noise, nearly killing him. He was charged with assault with a deadly weapon with an enhancement for great bodily injury. And sources tell me the LA County Probation Department recommended a prison sentence for him, with the probation officer writing in part, quote, "The defendant must be held accountable for his violent actions. The defendant's conduct is alarming and disturbing. This deputy is concerned about the possibility of future violent outbursts." But that prison recommendation was ignored.
Surprise, surprise. So this guy stabs a stranger in the neck because he was making too much noise. The people who looked at the case said, please put this person behind bars. We are worried this could happen again. That did not happen. And then something else did. Cut 25.
In 2021, progressive LA County DA George Gascon's administration agreed to give Sutherland mental health diversion instead of incarceration, a decision that proved deadly. Last Tuesday, LAPD arrested Sutherland again, this time for murder, after police say he shot and killed his upstairs neighbor in her own apartment, firing 19 times in the process. The victim, 30-year-old Jennifer Gomez, was pronounced dead on scene with multiple gunshot wounds. Her neighbors told police Sutherland had previously confronted her about making stomping noises in the past. I reached out to LADA George Gascon's office asking how it made any sense to give Sutherland diversion for that next stabbing crime. They responded in part, quote, "A court-appointed psychologist deemed him suitable for the treatment program, and our prosecutor agreed to the defense request for mental health diversion."
I mean, that last part's amazing. So this guy stabbed a construction worker who's being too loud, in his mind, in the neck, almost killed him. They didn't charge him with attempted murder, just an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Instead of going to prison for that, he was then put into some sort of, psych sort of program, despite warnings, saying this is a violent person prone to outbursts. You need this person incarcerated for the safety of others. But the very progressive, equitable, justice-minded George Gascon in his office said, no, we're going to let this person back on the street. And then he murdered a woman, allegedly shooting 19 times as he ended the life of a 30-year-old woman, Jennifer Gomez, a woman of color, if we're playing those sorts of games, as they so often do in these types of jurisdictions, gone. Because she was making too much noise in the mind of this man who lashes out violently when that happens. 19 shots. And by the way, let me just ask, how did this man have a gun? A lunatic with a violent record? How did he have a gun? In a state like California, where the gun laws are very strict and they pat themselves on the back all the time, it's almost as if people who aren't eligible to have guns somehow get them anyway. Because criminals don't follow laws, by definition. 19 shots, and the woman is dead. And then the media reaches out to Gascon's office, and rather than saying, we are so sorry for this loss, this was a mistake, this person was too dangerous, obviously, to be let out of this program, and we need to tighten up how we think about this program, they just put out a little statement saying, oh yeah, the psychologist deemed him suitable. And so we agreed for the defense request, this guy's defense, for this mental health diversion rather than prison. They're proud of it. They're doubling down on it. A young woman is dead completely needlessly, and they're like, yeah, that was the right call. That's George Gascon and Soros-style prosecution in Los Angeles. By the way, and I saw Malugin was tweeting about this as well, just a few weeks ago, another story in Los Angeles. Same jurisdiction, same people in charge. Let me read just a snippet from that FoxNews.com story. This was early May, so just under a month ago. A violent career criminal who was on the streets and not in jail because she was assigned mental health treatment instead of prison time is now accused of killing an innocent Los Angeles father. Jade Brookfield, 23, was arrested in April and charged with murder after she allegedly fatally stabbed 40-year-old Dennis Banner during an argument in the street. Law enforcement sources tell Fox News that Brookfield, the alleged assailant, had a lengthy criminal history for alleged assault, assault with a deadly weapon, and multiple violent felonies with knives. But she had inexplicably avoided incarceration and was repeatedly given mental health diversions. It took losing a father, a family losing their father, for these diversions to be terminated. And only now is the suspect finally being held in custody. Multiple violent attacks using a knife. They don't put this person in jail because mental health and restorative justice and all the words that they want to use. And now there's a family and kids with a dad who's dead. Just like the young woman in her apartment, shot to death by someone else in a very similar situation with a similar profile. And apparently the office of George Gascon says, yeah, these are the costs. These are the wages of restorative justice and equity and true social and racial justice, or whatever banal slogans they want to use. These are deadly policies. And it's not just California. We see this in Chicago, and we give you examples of that. We see this in Philadelphia. We see it here in New York, Washington, D.C. The list goes on. There's something in common in all of those places. It has to do with the ideology of the people making policies. And I guess, but enough innocent people are just going to be sacrificed on the altar of this progress for some failed ideological, dangerous project. I mean, on and on it goes. And on we will go, covering it so long as people continue to tolerate this. We're just getting started. It is the Guy Benson Show in New York today on this Thursday. We'll be right back.
Not the same talking points here. The Guy Benson Show.